I'd like to call the meeting of the City Council of University City to order on March 25th, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. Ms. Reese, will you please call the roll? But before you do, Mayor Crow and Councilmember Hale are excused.
Councilmember Clay. Councilmember McMahon.
Here.
Councilmember Cusick.
Here.
Councilmember Smotherson. Mayor Pro Tem Carr.
Here. Okay. We have the agenda. Are there any modifications or amendments to the agenda?
Mayor Pro Tem Carr, I would recommend moving consent item number J3 as the second item up under K, the city manager's report.
Okay, is there a motion to approve? Councilmember Cusick, a second. Councilmember Smotherson, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? The approval of the agenda carries. Let's see, there are no proclamations, and the approval of the minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve the March 11th, 2019 regular session minutes? Councilmember Clay, and a second. Councilmember Smotherson. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion to approve the minutes carries. Is there a motion to approve the joint study session minutes from March 11th, 2019? Councilmember Clay? Councilmember Cusick is the second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. There are no appointments to the boards and commissions. However, we have a swearing in to the boards and commissions. Susan Schmaltz was sworn into the Park Commission on March 18th in the clerk's office, and Kathy Stratman was sworn into the senior. Oh, I'm sorry. Welcome, Kathy. Okay. Okay, to be sworn in. Yes, thank you.
I, Kathy Stratman,
Do solemnly swear that I possess all of the qualifications and am not subject to any of the disqualifications named in the charter for the office I am about to assume.
do solemnly swear that I possess all the qualifications and am not subject to any of the disqualifications named in the charter for the office I am about to assume.
That I will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States and of the state of Missouri, and the charter and ordinances of the University City.
That I will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States and of the state of Missouri and the charter and ordinances of University City.
And that I will faithfully and conscientiously discharge the duties of the office I am about to assume with impartiality and justice.
And that I will faithfully and conscientiously discharge the duties of the office I'm about to assume with impartiality and justice.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We are now going to have citizen participation. It is a total of 15 minutes. Each speaker should give their name and address, and you have 5 minutes, if you would like, 5 minutes, in which to address the council and the public. The first speaker is Gabe Angieri.
Gabe Angieri at 8633 Mayflower Court. Here to speak to the Olive redevelopment. Be reading from some notes. This is a story about a neighborhood affected by the development in the 3rd Ward. 2 years ago, we were approached by Novus about a potential buyout. This right around February 2017. These materialized into serious negotiations about 1 year later, about a year ago today. At that time, there was 17 nicely maintained and occupied homes on Mayflower Court. We and our neighbors, my wife and I and our neighbors, decided to negotiate with Novus after hearing from Rodney Jennings, our representative at the time, that the city had that the project had the full support of the city council. It would be great for the city's future. When he met in our living room, in my living room, he said that if this development did go forward, it wouldn't be too long before another one came along, and who could say what that might portend for us. So we began negotiating with Novus. We finalized attractive terms about a year ago. Our neighborhood has been in limbo ever since, waiting for the outcomes of this process. Today, 5 homes sit vacant on Mayflower Court. It's still a nice neighborhood, but it is at risk of collapsing if the City Council continues to delay this project. The city's gross negligence in pushing forward with the project based on an economic impact plan that had an 8-figure error has negatively impacted me, my neighbors, and many others in our community who will benefit from this project and are ready to move on with our lives. It's inconceivable to me that no one from the city has been held accountable for overlooking the massive miscalculation on the part of PGAV. I would like to know who, if anyone, will be held accountable and what the city is going to do to expedite this process so me, my wife, my kids, and our neighbors can get on with our lives. Novus has assured me that they are still interested in doing this project and they're anxious to move forward. And we have about 3 weeks to get this wrapped up before our options contracts expire. So I'd encourage you all to get to the business of doing the people's work. Thank you.
The next speaker is Sonia Pointer.
Hi, Sonia Pointer, 8039 Canton Avenue. I just want to start by saying that I absolutely oppose the Olive and 170 TIF project. I am a 3rd Ward resident, and I'm requesting that the City Council vote no on this project moving forward. I think that it's very problematic that the City Council move forward with this project in the way that it has. In order to develop this city, the City Council should have came to the residents and asked for our input, made a plan for a project, and then tried to develop a project around those values that us residents established and what we wanted. You all did not do that. This project absolutely needs to stop. As far as the residents, I'm a 3rd Ward resident, and I just heard from a 3rd Ward resident as well who is in the project development area. The city, as well as the developer, messed up when they went ahead with this project without engaging the rest of the community, because this is not just about the people in the redevelopment area. This is not just about their homes being taken for the people who have not signed this contract or for the people who have chosen to sell. This is about the rest of the 3rd Ward that will be left behind. You all have not addressed our concerns with regard to this project, on top of the financial error that has been established. The city needs to stop. You all need to stop. Don't go forward with this project. Start from scratch. Do it the right way, the way that you should have done in the first place, and the way that you yourselves would like for it to happen if you were in our shoes. I think it's very hypocritical that the city has called out Better Together for the way that it is conducting this plan for the region, the merger. How can you call them out for not engaging the residents of St. Louis County and St. Louis City, for not asking us what we want, for trying to skate around what we may want by going to outside communities who have no stake in our region? And then you do the same thing when it comes to University City and development. It's hypocritical. You all are doing the same things that you're accusing Better Together of doing. You are doing the same things that you accused the Metropolitan Sewer District of doing when they tried to locate those raw sewage tanks in the 3rd Ward on top of predominantly black homeowners' homes, lower income to moderate income homes. I want the city to stop this project. You all should not move forward. I feel sorry for the people who are held in limbo in the 3rd Ward, but they have to understand this isn't just about them. You all need to understand that this isn't just about them. This is about the city as a whole, and especially the 3rd Ward, since this is where this project is going. Stop.
The next speaker is Leif Johnson.
Leif Johnson. I live at 836 Barclay Square in University City. I'm speaking. We had a very interesting speaker at the session, the pre-session of the City Council. And one of the things I asked him was, what were the municipalities like when there was a great industrial development of the country? For example, take Chicago. At the end of Chicago, at the end of World War II, Chicago had or produced just about every industrial, chemical, and manufactured good, plus a lot of consumer goods, telephones, etc. But they were, as the speaker said, Dr. Jones said, there were over 100 municipalities in Chicago at the time. In fact, when you take the whole SMSA of Chicago, which is a more recent conception, there's probably 150 of them. That didn't seem to inhibit the growth of Chicago. It grew unbelievably fast. There was no city in the world that grew as fast as Chicago. It was a miracle. Well, look at other cities. Look at Indianapolis. It grew enormously with all kinds of small municipalities. And that's been true all over the country. There's been a nucleus, which is the city, and then there have been municipalities surrounding that. And the question of economic development was the fact that there were industries springing up all over the place, and we were becoming richer and richer and richer, and without any concern for metropolitan government. So why do we have to have this regional government now? What possible advantage could we have as people? Well, I think that the only person who has an advantage would be Rex Sinquefield and his people. A very strong, centralized county government would be a perfect instrument for issuing bonds, rescuing the city of St. Louis, issuing bonds for amusement parks, convention center, stadium, maybe 2, maybe 3. All kinds of these things that always have to have an attached revenue stream. That's always important. But that's what it is. It's a financial scheme. And I'm afraid that if the freeholders goes through, it's going to be the same scheme because it's the same people. It's the mayor of St. Louis and the city, and then the county executive of St. Louis County. It's the same people, and this is what they want, and they are determined to get it. The only way we could stop it is to focus on Rex Singfield and stop them. If we divert our efforts into anything else, we could lose. Thank you.
The next speaker is Gerald Tiers.
Gerald Tiers, 7345 Chamberlain. Thank you, Council and Mayor Pro Tem. I'm here to talk about the infamous development, or perhaps non-development. It appears that there is no further activity with regard to the Olivan 170 development that's been touted so highly. It actually appears that the development idea has been abandoned by the council, which promoted it so much. There's apparently been nothing new posted on the website since January. There has been no new announcement of progress aside from some references to negotiations and to 19 changes that the developer made. And it seems headed toward a default failure by the clock running out. Well, according to generally reliable sources, there have been essentially no negotiations since January, at least not with the developer or with businesses. And the 19 changes, those were apparently actually included in the agreement that's posted on the website. That's been there since January, in which the developer signed. That's prior to the mistake being discovered, of course. The residents need to know if this is still active, and if not, why not? We get little to no information on this very important issue. Even the developer seems to be left out of the loop here, since he took the very unusual step of coming and speaking publicly to the council instead of in negotiations. Maybe this is why we needed a CBA with this project. Statements made by the mayor seem to be preparing us for an announcement that you could not agree with the developer on a plan that was good for U City. The truth seems to be that the developer is good to go, the TIF is sound, and the sticking point on this whole matter is last year's tax mistake and some over-promising on the money for the third ward, for RPA 2, which is a city problem and not a developer problem, of course. It seems pretty clear that the anchor tenant, which is pretty much admitted to be Costco, wants to be at that location. Apparently, they originally wanted to be in Olivet. They could not find the space in Olivet. This location is perfect for them. They want it. It can work for U City. Having them here will benefit the city in many ways besides just the money that we could get, including local hiring. Costco does local hiring, and they pay a good salary. And besides that, encouraging further development elsewhere, such as Del Mar and 170. If you turn this one down, the next developer is going to be looking someplace else for what they're wanting to do. Make no mistake, U City and RPA 2, Third Ward, will still get benefits from this development, even if the total money for the RPA 2 work has to be less than the overpromised amount that was originally announced. And given the financials for the anchor tenant, this should be their most profitable store in the area. I understand it's also the last one they're going to put in. Miss it and you're out of luck. This is the one time that you're going to get this chance. Their sales tax volume should be larger than predicted. They have $164 million of transactions per year per store on average. Approximately 80% of that would be taxable. That's what, around $130 million of sales that's taxable. Not cheap. And you have another 1% non-pooled income that, with a little change in how much is contributed possibly from the general fund, would essentially transfer through. So, they're also the store that's most likely to weather this problem with Amazon and the, quote, death of brick and mortar stores, which is not evident when you look at the local Target, Walmart, and so forth. Pardon?
30 seconds.
Yes, thank you. This development has been highly touted for almost a year and now has a snag. We elect smart, educated leaders to solve this sort of a problem. Now is the time for the council to provide innovative leadership and make this development, which you have so forcefully promoted, happen with maximum benefits. This is your big chance to shine. Don't let the clock run out by default. Thank you.
That concludes this section of citizen participation. There'll be another section later on in the meeting. Public hearings. We have a public hearing for the zoning code text amendment to Article 7, off-street parking and loading requirements. I'm going to open that public hearing, let's see, at 6:51 p.m. Ms. Reese, are there any speakers?
There are none at this time.
Thank you. I'm going to close that hearing at 6:51 p.m. We're now moving on to the consent agenda. City Manager Rose.
Mayor Pro Tem Carr and council members, the consent agenda consists of 3 items tonight. They are considered routine and can be approved by one action of the council.
Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda? Councilmember Smotherson, a second. Councilmember Clay. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Nay. Okay. So that consent agenda motion passes. City Manager's report, again.
Mayor Pro Tem Carr and council members, this first item up under K1 is to receive a presentation with regards to the FY 2018 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. It is our audit, and I am recommending a discussion and acceptance of this item.
Okay, thank you. My name is Mike Williams. I'm a partner at Hochschild Bloom & Company, CPAs, and I'm the partner in charge of the, thank you, city's audit. We recently issued some reports related to the audit for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2018. They look something like this. One is a booklet that contains a comprehensive annual financial report. There's also a couple of separate letters that are also issued. And what I'd like to do is just kind of quickly flip through the comprehensive annual financial report and tell you what I think is important or maybe different from the prior year, and be happy to take any questions that you have. So, and then we'll talk about the other reports. So this contains the audited financial statements, the auditor's report, and the other information is related to the audit that comes out after we're finished with the audit. So anyway, just to start going through here some, after the table of contents, the first section is the financial section, which starts off with a transmittal letter on the City of Hughes City's letterhead. This has information in it related to the various parts of the report, the financial management controls, other information about economic condition and outlook. So some a little more interesting information sometimes than what's the numbers that are just in the basic financial statement. So I think that's one of the good things about the transmittal letter. That goes through Roman numeral page 4, then Roman numeral page 5 begins the list of principal officials. There's an org chart, and then there's on Roman numeral page 7, there is a certificate of achievement for excellence in financial reporting, which I think that's good because this goes to show the city's gone above and beyond the normal audit to send its audit to this Government Finance Officers Association. It's a national association that reviews the report for the auditing and audits accounting standards that we say it's in compliance with, but it also has information basically related to the 10 years of trend information and the statistical and other items in the report. So anyway, just goes to show I think the city's gone with full accountability related to its audit report. So that's good. After that then begins the financial section. The first part of that is the independent auditor's report. It's on our letterhead. I think the important part of this is what you get for when you get an audit, what you pay for. This is the independent auditor's report. The information, the amounts and disclosures are the representation of the city, and our job is to audit that information. So so the first paragraph on this says that we've audited the financial statements. The next section talks about the city's responsibility. The next section talks about the auditor's responsibility. But I think the important part is on page 2 that says the opinion. So this is the auditor's opinion on the financial statements, which says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects. So there's no modifications to the opinion, no qualifications. So it's also referred to as a clean opinion. And it's similar to what the city's had before, but I think that's important. So that's the auditor's opinion on the financial statements. After that then begins the management's discussion and analysis. And I was going to mention a few things on this. On page 7, the first thing I was going to talk about is this first schedule of numbers. So I like this report because it gives a big picture perspective on the assets and liabilities of the city at June 30, 18 compared to 2017. So on the right side of the page, it has the governmental activities. The governmental activities are general fund, capital improvements fund, parks and stormwater, those types of funds. And there's business type activities, which are the solid waste and parking funds, those types of funds. And then there's a total column. And then just to talk about some of the total assets for the city include things like cash and investments and capital assets, which are infrastructure and vehicles, buildings, things like that. So the total assets then show on here about $79,483,000. There's some deferred inflows and outflows. Liabilities of the city total about $22,865,000. And then the difference between all the assets and deferred amounts is called the net position. So that's like retained earnings for a regular company. And it shows total net position of $56,172,000. So you can see the changes between this year and the amounts reported in the previous year off to the side. So again, this is just the big picture, consolidated, all the funds blended together on a full accrual basis with all the assets and liabilities reported. The next page then, page 8, has information related to the revenues and expenses. So page 7 is a snapshot at a point in time. It's as of June 30th. Page 8 then is a summary of the revenues and expenses for a fiscal period. And so the top part of the page is revenues, and then there's expenses, and then it reconciles to the net position. And again, just to talk about the totals, the total revenues for the city around $34,940,000 under that total 2018 column. Total expenses around $34,846,000. So there's an increase for the year of about $94,000. So pretty close. And overall, then you can kind of just to look at the change column. It's the difference between 2017 and 2018. You can see there's about a 5.1% increase in revenues, about a 0.3% increase in expenses, and then the changes to the other amounts are also listed on the page. So overall, that's the total revenues, expenses, assets, and liabilities. Okay, so a lot of numbers there, but the next thing I was going to talk about is a little more of the details. So that is the big picture thing, big picture presentation. The page 16 then gets into some of the funds. So page 16, the top part of the page shows the assets, and then there's liabilities and fund balance. So the different funds, this is the governmental funds, so that show up on this page, it's the general fund, the parks and storm capital, those are the larger funds. But I like to talk about the general fund since it's the main operating fund of the city. This shows assets in the general fund of around $21,289,000. Liabilities around $3,032,000. Some deferred inflows. And then the difference between the assets, liabilities, and deferred amount is the fund balance. And so sometimes you want to know what the fund balance is. You can see the total fund balance on here around $17,206,000. So that's the assets and liabilities for the general fund, and you can see the other types of those numbers for the other funds. A couple pages after that then is the revenues and expenses for the fiscal year. Again, on page 18, the top part of the page has the revenues. The total general fund revenues around $24,006,000. Expenditures around $23,502,000. So an improvement of the fund balance amount for the year of about $504,000. So, and again, you can see the types of revenues and expenses for the other funds. Okay, so that's the governmental funds. A couple pages after that, there's information on the proprietary funds, which these are the business type activities for the parking garage, solid waste. Page 21 has the revenues and expenditures related to that. I wasn't going to talk about that a whole lot. You can see those numbers on here. Page 24 and 25 have totals of the pension trust funds. Those are significant amounts, but there's a lot more detail on that further back in the notes to the financial statements. So that's the management's discussion and actually the financial statements. And then everything after that are notes to the financial statements. And so note A begins on page 26. It's accounting policies. I wasn't going to talk about it much, but then the first detailed note begins on page 36, which is cash and investments. And there's a couple things I was going to mention on this note B, cash and investments. It says deposits, but deposits in this case are bank deposits. That's how much what's covered for the bank deposits. And there's a state statute that your cash in the bank has to be secured by FDIC or pledged collateral. And that middle sentence says, as of June 30, the city's bank balances are entirely insured or collateralized. So that's good. You're in compliance with that requirement. Then there's a list of the investments on page 37. So sometimes you want to know what the city has its investments in. So this is a summary of that as of June 30th. I don't think this changed a whole lot since last year, but some large numbers there. Let's see, then the next thing I was going to mention is capital assets on page 40 and 41. There's big, now these are important, I think, because they're the long-term assets that the city has significant investments in, the cost that the city implements, and then they begin depreciating. So this is a whole schedule of the assets and the depreciation related to those assets, and that's for those several pages. And then the long-term debt begins on page 43. Again, I think this is important. This is similar to a mortgage. It's how much you have to pay on your debt for the long-term life of those liabilities. So those schedules go through page 44. And then the top of page 45 gets into the employee retirement benefit plan. So I just wanted to mention a few numbers too on this. This does show, the top of page 45 shows the total pension liability compared to the net position. So it does show that there's that the plan is between both funds is 76.01% funded, and then there's further information further on back on that. And what I was going to mention on bottom of page 47, for instance, is that this note is broken down into the different types of pension plans. And there was an improvement noted at the bottom of page 47, that the net pension liability started off the year at about $7.7 million, and then it ended up the year about $6.2 million. So it's an improvement on that liability. Okay, so one of the other new items is note F this year. There's not a lot there, but the city does have a post-employment plan, and this note actually changed. The city had to implement a new accounting standard related to this benefit plan, so the city did do that, so that's important. And that pretty much rounds out the rest of the notes. After that, on page 64 and 65 begin some information on the budget to actual information. So top of page 65 has a total of the total revenues for the general fund. So this shows the budget original budget, the final budget, the actual revenues for the year, and it shows the city's under budget on its revenues by about $263,000. So then, if you look at the expenses, then these are detailed out through page 68. Total expenditures for the general fund, kind of in the middle of page 68, show the expenditures are under budget by about $1,341,000. So under budget on expenditures, and that's generally the right way you want to be. And then there's other budget to actual information for the rest of the report. A lot of the smaller funds are listed back here. And then on page 87, 88, begin the statistical information, which has this year's information generally compared to the previous 9 years. So you could look at the history of all the numbers on in the back part of the report. So that's the statistical section. Then the other couple of reports I was going to talk about, the first one is a separate letter we've issued. It's got the bold letters at the top, Independent Auditor's Report on Internal Control and Compliance. And if there are, this is supposed to communicate to the users of the financial statements that we don't just take the numbers from the accounting department and record them on the big financial report like this, but we look at internal controls and policies and procedures, and if there's anything important related to that goes in this report. And similar to last year, you did have one comment. It's on page 2, the second paragraph. It talks about the adjustments that the auditors had to make. So that was the finding for this year related to that. And then the compliance paragraph, though, the last sentence of that says, the results of our test disclose no instances of noncompliance that are required to be reported. So that's good. Okay, so that's the report on internal controls and compliance. And then our last thing I was going to mention is our separate letter, and sometimes I refer to that as a management letter. It has some general information related to the audit, has a listing of the adjustments made, and then various comments and recommendations that are not significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, just recommendations that we have for management and finance department. So I wasn't going to read through each one of those, but I'll be happy to take any questions on this report or any of the other reports.
First, do I hear a motion to accept the auditor's report for 2018? Councilmember McMahon, a second. Councilmember Cusick. Any discussion? Thank you very much.
Sure, happy to. Thank you.
Let's see. All those in favor of accepting the FY 2018 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report from the auditor? Aye. Opposed? So that motion has carried.
Mayor Pro Tem and council members, before going on to the next item, which is K2, being the parking study, I would like to introduce our new director over Parks, Recreation, and Forestry, Darren Dunkel, who has 20-plus years of experience in that area, and so he's in his second week now. As we become traditional in doing so, we threw him off the deep end, and he is swimming very well right now. So just wanted to welcome him and say how pleased I am to have him on board. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd also like to recognize our acting finance director, Keith Cole, who went through a very arduous process trying to get all the information needed for the audit. Him and his staff did a fantastic job with it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Carr and council members, item K2, this item requests funding of $24,000 to conduct a parking study. I have asked that this item be taken off the consent agenda in an effort to expand the scope of the project, I would like to include the 6600 through 6800 block of Washington Avenue and Kingsbury. I would also like to include the streets of Trinity, Kingsland, and Melville between Washington and Kingsbury. So it would be my intention to expand the scope of the study to include those areas. We are also recommending approval simultaneously of Lockmuller Group, who would actually perform the study for us. And Mr. Sinan Alplasan, our Public Works Director, did you have any additional comment?
Do I hear a motion first to approve the parking study? Councilmember McMahon, a second. Councilmember Cusick. I would like some kind of a motion to accept the amendments that the city manager has made. Councilmember Cusick, Councilmember McMahon. Any discussion on those amendments? All those in favor of the amendments? Okay, I'm sorry.
Does this increase the cost of the project, Mr. Rose?
Mr. Alplasan, do you have any information on that?
Hello. I rechecked the areas, and in fact, the areas that we now include additionally in the scope, I think the intent was to include them anyways. They are bordering areas. When we checked with the consultant today, they were not sure either. So what they gave us was $1,000 additional cost. But as Mr. Rose listed the areas now, my interpretation is that they were already, when these engineers provide those boundaries, they include those boundaries in the area. And so again, if we want to be safe, it is instead of a $24,000 study, if we can authorize it to be a $25,000 expenditure, although probably we would keep that consultant to a $24,000 ceiling.
So I'm a bit confused now. So we have an amendment on the floor, and that amendment includes the additional streets and areas, as well as a potential increase in the cost of up to $1,000. Is that correct? Any other discussion? All those in favor of the amendment? Aye. All those opposed? Okay, the amendment passes. Now, the motion to accept the parking study, actually to give the city manager the authority to enter into the agreement of the parking study. Aye. Yes, we had a motion at the beginning. Is there a discussion on that? Okay. Those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That authorization for the parking study passes. Okay, it looks like we have no unfinished business, and now new business, no resolutions. So we have bill number 9383. Ms. Reese, will you please I'm sorry? Oh, yes, I'm sorry, thank you. So is someone going to introduce bill number 9383? Councilmember Cusick? Ms. Reese, will you please give that a first reading?
An ordinance amending Chapter 400 of the Municipal Code of the City of University City relating to zoning by amending Sections 400.2010, 400.2070, 400.2130, and 400.2140 thereof, and by adding 400.2010 3.2145 therein relating to off-street parking and loading regulations containing a savings clause and providing a penalty.
Is there anyone to introduce Bill number 9384? Councilmember McMahon. Ms. Reese, will you please read Bill number 9384, first reading?
An ordinance amending Schedule 3 of the Traffic Code to revise traffic regulation as provided herein.
We're now going to address the council reports and business. Any boards and commission appointments needed? I didn't see any, so any liaison reports? None. Boards and commission task force minutes or other business discussions? I see none. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr.
Yes,
Smotherson? Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem, what I wanted to bring up this issue now during discussions and not actually wait till council comments. And basically what I wanted to bring up is just a reminder of something that I brought up. I think I started this back in 2016 and continue this in 2017 and 18, and that is the Community Development Block Grant. And I just wanted to have the city manager address that Community Development Block Grant that I was intending and hopefully wanting to have that used for paving Kennedy. Kennedy is one of those unfinished streets that per our ordinance says that we don't have to really do anything for it. And I started this again, as I mentioned. I actually, and I wanted to compliment, I just wanted to say that I actually did a Mayor Pro Tem Council Member Carr research and actually went back and found the notes where I mentioned this and had a discussion with Tina at the time, our finance director, about this. And this was back in September of 2018. It was a September meeting. So again, I wanted our city manager to address that so that we're reminded that we're going to apply for that grant. And then also one other thing that I wanted to mention too and have the city manager address, and I'm glad to see the police chief here tonight, and that is also what our plans are for springtime, for the spring weather and activities that are going to pick up in our loop and our city, and what that plan might be, if there is one, for the upcoming warm weather kind of events that and things that happen during the spring. I mentioned that also because I was sitting downtown last weekend and it was literally only about 61 degrees. And just the whiff of any warmth made the activity downtown pick up. I mean, scooters flying everywhere, motorcycles driving everywhere, meaning, so it's coming our way. I just wanted to kind of get a head start on that. So thank you.
Thank you. We're now going to reopen citizen participation. Again, each speaker has 5 minutes, and I'm sorry.
I believe he wants me to respond to both of
Oh,
those issues.
okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Mayor Pro Tem Carr and Councilmember Smotherson, with regards to the CDBG, project on Kennedy Street, we're in the process of identifying projects that would qualify for CDBG funds, so it's timely from that perspective that you're raising this issue. We'll be looking to our Public Works Director to provide information on whether this street will qualify. I would imagine that it will, as well as identifying what type of improvements can be made on Kennedy. So I will report back to you and the council with a recommendation on how I believe we should proceed with that issue. On the matter of the scooters that we are preparing for, currently we don't have an agreement with any company to operate scooters within the city of University City. So anyone that is operating scooters in University City is actually doing that illegally. So our officers, as well as our street department staff, should they see those scooters in the right-of-way, will be authorized to collect them. And we'll charge a hefty price to get them back. So that's our intention. We hope to be able to bring forward to you, I would say within the next 60 days or so, a policy on how we're recommending you govern that particular private sector business. So how you govern scooters in University City.
Thank you. Again, we're going to open the second section of citizen participation. Each speaker has 5 minutes. Yes? I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's quite all right. It's quite all right.
It's okay.
City Manager Rose, I think the scooter point was a helpful one, but I think Councilman Smotherson was more pointing towards what we've called warm weather policing. If you may recall, we had a meeting with Chief Hampton, and just we know, to Councilman Smotherson's point, the warm weather brings out activities. Many are beneficial, some not so beneficial to our community, and so I don't think there's an expectation of a full answer right now, but perhaps as we look at study sessions or future meetings, and I can certainly coordinate with my colleagues, I think we would want an update on what warm weather policing is going to look like. Our crime statistics, as we know, are moving in the right direction, but warm weather presents the opportunity for a reversal of that trend, so we want to make sure we're on top of that. Thank you.
Councilmember Cusick.
Yes, just to follow up with Councilmember Smotherson's questions, I was going to save this for council comments, but I think I'll say this now, that just last Tuesday, March 19th, we had a meeting with Chief Hampton and 2 of his captains with many of the Loop business owners in the Loop to discuss the upcoming spring business that will be descending upon the Loop. So the police department has been meeting with business owners in the area on how they can respond to different incidents that should take place in the Loop. So we are looking at that issue, and there have been ongoing discussions, and we'll be having more discussions about that. And to that end, the police department actually put together a nice brochure that's being handed out to business owners and managers in the Loop, as well as other places in University City, to deter activity like panhandling, etc. So I would just like to say that this discussion is already starting to take place, and the police are looking at this and working with the business owners in the Loop.
Anyone else? Okay. Now we're going to open the second section of citizen participation. Each speaker has up to 5 minutes. Please give your name and address. And the first speaker will be Ariel Gardner.
Good evening, Ariel Gardner, 8649 Richard Court. I'm talking this evening about the Olive 170 development project. I am a homeowner in the redevelopment area, and just a few weeks ago, my husband and I received a notification from the county assessor's office notifying us that our home value has increased, and that we will then be paying higher personal property tax rates. This was very confusing to us, considering that we currently live in a blighted area, and even if we weren't we are under contract with Novus, which means we couldn't even sell our house at this point anyway to take advantage of personal property tax rise. And we spoke to some of our neighbors who also spoke on the fact that they had received notification from the county assessor's website, and we're also receiving an increase in their personal property tax rates. This is very concerning to us, obviously. So we called the county assessor's office and asked them what was the reasoning, and they told us that there were homes in our area that were being sold at a price that warranted a property tax increase. Again, this seems strange considering where we live and what's currently going on. We also asked the assessor's office about the blighted area, if they knew about it. They were completely unaware of that. Again, we think this is strange. We're just talking to our neighbors about it. We decided to look on the county assessor's website, where we came to the realization that Novus currently owns 4 residential homes in RPA 1, one of which is on our block, and it sold for significantly higher than market value to Novus. This is concerning to us, and I'm assuming it's something that the city is aware of, but what's happening is that we are beginning to just this list of issues that the city does not seem to want to be very forthright with the homeowners in RPA 1. It's another side effect of kind of the lack of communication and transparency that we feel is happening with those of us that are homeowners. We hear a lot about this whole, well, it's an agreement between a willing seller and a willing buyer, but the thing is that our elected leaders in front of us are the ones that are supposed to be advocating on our behalf, that I would hope would be in communication with us homeowners. You just talked about how that the police, that there was like a flyer that was developed by the police officers to give to the business owners in the loop about the upcoming, influx in business and potential crime. Where is that kind of outreach for those of us in RPA 1 who are dealing with issues that maybe not all of us are equipped to deal with? I don't know that the city was going to do anything about the personal property tax increase. That the only reason we are seeing it right now is because there's a home on our street that was sold for higher than market value for the sole purpose of this development. So I'm wondering if the city would be notifying the homeowners about this. Will the city be helping with the appeal process? Because I personally do not think that it is fair to us to receive this price increase. And again, just the longer that you take to drag out this process, the more side effects, the more negative side effects that those of us in RPA 1 are experiencing. It's something I've expressed to the City Council, and I am just speaking here on another one of those. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Aaron Ginsberg.
Hi, my name is Erin Ginsberg. I live at 430 West Point Court. And Honorable Mayor and City Council, I'm happy to report that UCity's Community Cat Advocates had a positive and productive meeting with Mr. Cross this past Friday. We discussed how a community-based trap, neuter, vaccinate, return program can be a safe, cost-efficient, and humane solution to pet overpopulation. We appreciate the opportunity to partner with UCity's Community Development Department to stabilize and reduce UCity's feral cat population through an officially sanctioned TNR program. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Tom Sullivan.
Tom Sullivan, 751 Syracuse. I have a few things to mention. I'm filing a complaint against the University City Library and Friends of the University City Library with the Missouri Ethics Commission. They are running a campaign in support of Proposition L, though no one has filed the necessary paperwork with the Missouri Ethics Commission or made any campaign finance reports as the law requires. The material put out by the Friends group does not properly identify the group. The material that was mailed out did not say who the treasurer was or even give an address. How shady is that? It's quite a deceptive campaign that's being run to support the property tax increase. In particular, it doesn't mention that Proposition L is a 49% property tax increase. UCity voters should reject such a dishonest proposal. I attended one of the library's focus groups, which are really designed to campaign for the tax hike, and spelled out to the director of the library, Patrick Wall, what he needed to do for the library and the Friends group to comply with the law. Yet the library has done nothing, despite spending a lot of resources itself campaigning for the tax. It's pretty bad when you can't even trust the University City Library. It wouldn't be surprising if it were the University City government, which has been corrupting elections for years by illegally spending public money to support ballot proposals. The latest was the bond issue proposal a few years back. The city spent thousands of dollars to print and mail campaign material in support of the proposals. But the worst is the UCity School District. It has also spent thousands of dollars to unlawfully campaign for its ballot proposals. Not a great example for students. Speaking of the University City Schools, state test scores were released last month, and the district is again near the bottom. With the previous results, the district was fourth worst in the area, 47th out of 50 school districts. Now the district is only fifth worst. It isn't because the schools improved, it's because another school district got worse. The school superintendent gave the State of the District address last month, and it's the same one she has given in previous years, the same one her predecessor gave for years, and the same one she will likely be given in future years. There is no reason to believe the schools will ever improve. As I said before, University City has 3 big problems, and the Costco development won't help with any of them. In addition to awful schools, crime is another big problem, and a badly managed city government is the third. Mr. Rose has made some progress in the last issue, but there is still a long ways to go. It isn't surprising that fewer people want to live in University City. Destroying dozens of businesses and homes in the Olive 170 area won't improve the situation. Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jan Adams.
Jan Adams, 7150 Cambridge Avenue. I rise to respond to Paulette Carr's newsletter and her published letter to the editor of the Post-Dispatch regarding the opposition to Better Together. First, Paulette is not a lawyer, so her attempt to offer a legal opinion is without expertise or authority. If she is simply articulating the opinion of our city attorney, John Mulligan, then this form of communication is unethical. If this is actually the opinion of Mr. Mulligan, then he needs to own it and to publish to the taxpayers who are paying his bills his opinion with his signature. This is important to citizens because if Paulette and/or Mr. Mulligan are wrong and they continue to proceed regardless of the warnings from another attorney, Chuck Hatfield, then Mr. Hatfield's client may sue our city and its agents, and we taxpayers will be paying what could be tens of thousands of dollars to defend our city officials. If Mr. Mulligan is found to be wrong, he cannot ethically charge taxpayers the cost of his defense. There is a simple resolution to this issue. Research this dispute and publish an attorney general opinion on this matter, free of charge. You just need to send him a formal request. Therefore, I urge this council to direct the city manager to request an opinion from our Attorney General immediately. In the meantime, this council should not authorize any expenditure of city funds relating to the proposed Better Together merger. You will not be fulfilling your fiduciary duty to be prudent stewards of our taxpayer funds if you expose the city to the risk of further lawsuits. After you have been put on notice by an experienced lawyer whose client is likely to be well-financed and can afford to outspend any city lawyers. Thank you, and I ask that my written comments be attached to the minutes of the record.
Thank you, and that concludes the portion of citizen participation. Are there any council comments this evening? Mr. Cusick.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. I would like to remind everyone that a week from tomorrow is Election Day, and we have municipal elections, and there will be the Board of Education will have 3 people running for, I believe, 2 seats, and then, of course, Prop L will be on that. And I, as an individual and as a resident of University City and a lover of our library, will be voting for Proposition L, and I would encourage everyone to find out what it's about and support it. And also, as a private citizen, I am still handing out petitions for individuals to sign if they are a registered voter in St. Louis County. And if you would like to sign the petition for the freeholders to board to be appointed, please see me after this council meeting, because I have those petitions available if you haven't signed them yet and you're interested in signing them. Thank you.
Anyone else? So I have some things to remind us. Tomorrow, eat pizza to raise dough from U City and Bloom. At the Dewey's in University City, from 4 until 10 p.m., up to 20% of the cost of food and beverage would be donated to U City and Bloom. So it's a great way to get a great pizza and to help out U City and Bloom. And also this Saturday, U City in Bloom is holding a volunteer orientation and open house at their Mary Fahey Pavilion right next to the dog park on Vernon at 6860 Vernon. And so if you're interested in volunteering or just want to find out what's happening, that will take place between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. And then for those who are looking to start planting, I see things blooming right now. My Pyrrhus japonica is in full bloom, and so I'm looking for other things coming up. They will be holding their annual plant sale on April 26th and 28th, so mark your calendars. I know it's a little more than a month off, but it never hurts to start planning, and they will at the same time be having their opening evening where you get first pick and get to rub shoulders with all the gardeners in the city. So, anyone else? Okay, that concludes this meeting. I'd like, is there a motion to adjourn? Councilmember McMahon, second. Councilmember Smotherson, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, this meeting has been adjourned at 7:35 p.m.